Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome in. If you're coming back, I'm so glad to have you again. Let's talk about sharing our personal information with our patients. This is a subject I've been thinking about a lot. You know, when we are giving care to people, we have a tendency to talk to them. We have a tendency to form bonds with our patients sometimes, and they should be professional bonds. I find that when you're giving home care, in my personal experience, that can be really tricky to find out what is the line. So let's talk about that today. If you are new here and you like what you see and you want to see more, I ask that you like, subscribe, and follow. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about this. If you are giving care to a person and you're chatty like me, I just want to say these are my personal experiences, my personal feelings, my personal opinions. This is not expert, I'm not a doctor. Just sharing my personal opinions on stuff. I have a tendency to want to build a connection with people. I want to build a rapport with people when I'm giving them care. I want them to trust that they are in capable hands. I feel personally, if you go into a patient's room, if you go into a patient's home and you're not personable, if you're cold, if you don't interact, they don't want to interact with you, and they may not share vital information with you if they don't feel that they can talk to you. What is too much information though, right? Because we want to have communication with our patients, and in the home care setting, sometimes we're company for our patients. Sometimes we are conversation and human interaction for our patients in a hospice setting. So I don't say that you shouldn't talk to your patients, but what is too much? When have you crossed the line? Because I can tell you there have been times in the past where I have been communicating with a patient or someone else's patient, and I knew all about what was going on in their personal life. And we shouldn't be sharing that type of stuff with what's going on in our marriage, what's going on, you know, in our financial situation. I've seen situations in facilities where a patient and a nurse became entirely too close. And the nurse, well, she got fired. She got fired for being in a position that did not look appropriate. The patient wanted to give that particular nurse money. Now, this is all hearsay. This has been a long time ago, and I wasn't personally invested in this or knowledgeable of this on a personal level. But it was discussed, and it was like a cautionary tale. The nurse was spending a lot of time with the patient. The patient wanted to buy the nurse food. The patient wanted to give the nurse money because the nurse was going through hardships in their life, etc., etc. We can't do that as nurses. We can't take money from our patients. We can't allow our patients to buy us gifts. We are not trading services for gifts. We are doing a job that we get paid for. As nurses, as healthcare workers, we get paid to provide care for our patients, and we don't take tips. We're not waitresses. We really cannot accept tips. I will say that when I've worked in facilities, families have showed their thanks to a unit and, you know, praised a nurse to her supervisor or his supervisor about the care that they got. You know, nurses can get cards. We can get thank yous. I've seen nurses get flowers. You can give chocolates to the unit. Those types of things. But your patient should not be providing you with lunch and dinner and breakfast. Your patient should not be giving you money to pay your water bill. Not saying that that's what happened, but those are things that just shouldn't happen. Our patients shouldn't know what's going on behind the scenes in our lives, because what we're there to do when we're caring for our patients is provide them with care and understand what they need. And if we are talking about ourselves in a personal light and we are sharing information that we shouldn't be sharing with our patient, it can put a burden on your patient emotionally to think about what's going on in your life. And they will often excuse workers for their bad behavior, for their tardiness, for their lack of appropriate care. I have seen and heard about this in many, many cases on the news, in social media. We hear about stuff every day. If we are sharing our personal lives with our patients, and it is troublesome for us, they feel a burden to do something for us sometimes. But we are not there to get taken care of by our patients. We are not there to get things from our patients. We are there because we want to provide care, and we are there to meet a need in our patient medically. And sometimes those medical needs become psychosocial needs as well. Our patients need to be able to discuss how they're feeling about what's happening with their health. They need to be able to talk about those things. Now, if your patient says, do you have kids? I think it's okay to say you have kids. They have kids too. They want to know about your kids. If you're giving care all the time, I think sometimes it makes them feel good to talk about good things. I had a patient say to me, let's talk about good things. Tell me about your kids. They are going through difficult times and they feel sad, they feel down, and sometimes they want to hear something good. So they'll say, do you have any kids? I think it's acceptable from my personal opinion to say, yes, I have so many kids. I have a boy and a girl, for example. But we shouldn't be discussing maybe what school our kids go to, what, all their personal issues. We can say we have children and we can be proud of those children that we have. We can be proud of our children to our patient, but it shouldn't just be about ourselves when we're visiting our patients. So if your patient wants to know a little bit, in my personal opinion, I feel like if you're not at all personable with your patient, they're not going to trust you with their information. They want to know, if you see they have flowers, you can say, oh, I love those flowers. Those are my favorite flowers too. If a patient has a shirt on that is beautiful and it's your favorite color, you can say, oh my goodness, you know what? That's my favorite color and it looks so good on you. We're allowed to interact with our patients and be personable. We're allowed to be pleasant with our patients. We're allowed to share a little bit of personal information, but we should not be talking about our divorce. We should not be talking about our car that's broke down. We should not be talking about our children. We should not be talking about relatives that are in jail. I don't know. These are just some examples. We shouldn't be talking about those things with our patients. They shouldn't have to worry about that. If we're going to be absent from a patient, we can say to a patient, hey, I'm not going to see you next week. I'm going to be out of town. Hey, I have an appointment next week. I won't be able to make it to see you. Such and such nurse will be covering for me. If you have any needs, don't hesitate to reach out. This is really important. Your patients do have the right to know if you're not going to be fulfilling your appointment time with them. They have the right to know that you have obligations elsewhere, but they don't have to know the deep details. Now, that being said, I'm a talker. I will talk about the superficial things about myself sometimes, and I've had to sometimes say to myself, did I share too much? Because sometimes we want to connect with our patients and make them feel like we get it. But the fact is, we don't really get it. We're not really in our patient's head space. We're not really experiencing life from our patient's perspective. We want them to feel like we're there for them and we understand them, but we can't do it in a way that puts it back on ourselves. We can't put the focus back on ourselves as healthcare workers. As a nurse, we're taking care of these patients sometimes for lengthy amount of time. We are sometimes seeing these patients for months, sometimes years even, if you're working at the same job and you have the same caseload. If you have a steady caseload, you might see a patient for up to a year. In a hospice setting, you could be seeing a patient every day for a month at the end of their life, and you get to bond with their family. And that is really hard not to cross lines sometimes when you see somebody every day. We have to keep it in perspective that we're there as professionals and we're not there in a friendship capacity. Even if we really, really like our patients and we want to be friendly with them, we are there in a professional capacity to do a job. And it's really important that we do that job objectively and professionally. And that can be really challenging sometimes if you like to connect with people and you like to talk to people. I don't want to be rude with my patients if they ask me a question. Now, sometimes patients will cross the line with you and they will dig into your personal life in ways that they shouldn't. And it is perfectly acceptable to say, hey, well, let's talk about you. Let's talk about how you're doing. We don't have to talk about me. It's perfectly acceptable to turn the conversation back to your patient. You do not have to give personal information about yourself. And if a person is crossing a line, you absolutely should cut that off. In a professional way. We shouldn't be rude to our patients. We should be personable with our patients, but it's challenging to know where to draw the line sometimes, right? I know that CNAs have a very close relationship with patients. They're seeing them frequently. They're giving them their personal cares. And let's be honest, when somebody is washing you up and you're naked, sometimes maybe you want to talk to distract from the situation of being in the nude with somebody, it is challenging from a patient perspective to have somebody giving you personal cares. I've been in the bed getting cares. I've had people that I went to nursing school with giving me cares as a nurse on the floor, and it was awkward for me. And I'm talking about people that I worked with have put a Foley in when I was having a baby. So that is uncomfortable, and we certainly, I'm a joker. I probably made a joke about it, you know. One of my coworkers was a nursing student and asked if they could put a catheter in, and I think, you know, probably she felt comfortable with asking me if she could do that because we had worked together in a professional setting, and I had had many nursing students and I'd trained many people by this point in my career. But I'm glad that I was on an epidural. Because to be honest with you, I barely remember. I remembered saying, yeah, everybody needs to learn. But let's be real, that's an uncomfortable thought when I think about that girl that worked with me has put a catheter in me. So when we're giving personal cares to our patients and we're looking at their body and we're doing our assessments and we're giving cares, I think that can be very awkward and uncomfortable, and sometimes they want to fill that space with talking. For example, the patient who said to me that they wanted to talk about pleasant things. Let's talk about good things. Let's talk about pleasant things. They don't want to be focusing on the task that's happening at hand. Now, we should be communicating with our patients what we're doing, how we're doing it. But I understand a patient's need to have connection and to talk to their caregiver. We're in awkward situations. We're dealing with things that are very personal and private for the patient. And I think that they sometimes need a connection, in my opinion. They need that personal connection from the person who is providing care for them at this time when they're so uncomfortable and they don't feel good. You know, as healthcare workers, it's rare for us to see somebody in their top form. We're not taking care of people because they're well. As nurses and as healthcare workers, unless we're in a long-term care situation where a person is living in a long-term care setting and they're not unhealthy, in a hospice setting, in a hospital setting, in those types of settings, we are taking care of people. We are seeing them professionally because they don't feel well and they have a medical need to see us. And that's another thing, you know, they really sometimes just need that connection when they're going through the hardest things that they've been through. Again, we don't know what's going on in their personal lives, but sometimes they want to share it with us. And sometimes they need a little give and take. So in my opinion, as a nurse who's been doing this a lot of years, I think a little bit of give is okay. But I'm definitely not going to talk about the problems that I'm having in my personal life, anything that's going on financially in my life. But I do like to talk to my patients about traveling because I love to travel. I like to talk to my patients about recipes. They like to talk about cooking. I like to talk to my patients about my nursing journey sometimes, not patient-wise, but just over the years, things that I've seen that might be similar. You can share some of those things so that people know they're not alone without giving personal information about anyone. Yes, I've seen this before in my career. You're not alone. But really, patients really like when you interact. If you notice your patient likes gardening, if you like talking about flowers, they enjoy talking about flowers with you in a home care setting. If you like cooking meals, they like changing recipes with you. And I think that this is perfectly acceptable because it's not crossing any boundaries of personal information. And I think that those are the types of connections that is okay to make as people when we're seeing each other every day for months on end. And that's just my personal opinion. Have you ever been in a situation where you were talking to your patient and you overshared about yourself? Have you worked with people who you've heard about them getting into a situation that was kind of sticky because they overshared? How did people handle that? How did you handle it when your patient asked you for personal information? Did you share any information? Did you withhold that information? Are you the kind of person that feels they shouldn't know your personal life? And that's okay too. I would just love to talk about it in the comments. I think that stuff is really interesting to talk about, and it's great to see other people's perspectives. We're all working in this healthcare situation, and it's great to talk about our experiences and share those things together. I would love it if you would like, subscribe, and follow if you want more. And I hope to see you soon, and thank you so much for watching.